Good morning, my friends. Happy solstice and happy Sunday. Let's begin, as always, by taking a few breaths together. So, if you will, let it all out and then take a deep breath in and let go. Together, let's take another breath in and let go. One more breath in and letting go. So again, I want to say happy winter solstice. We are approaching the shortest day of the year and the longest night of the year, the beginning and the sort of middle of the coldest and darkest days of the cycle of the year. And the thing that I want to really begin to talk about this morning as we talk about embracing the light, the return of the light, that this metaphor that shows up, that we celebrate year after year after year, right around winter solstice, Christmas, Hanukkah, the holidays, New Year's, that there's sort of this really true, deep metaphorical significance that I think is worth examining. And as I've said many, many, many times, I really believe that the practice of metaphysics, of new thought, of science of mind, in a big way is about the practice of metaphor, is about looking for the deeper meaning that is really everywhere surrounding us in life. And if we have this idea that in a sense the universe is our mirror, not only for the individual but for the collective, and that everything that's happening around us, everything that we are experiencing, in a sense is reflecting something back to us, and in that something there's deep metaphor, and in that metaphor there's story, and in that story there is meaning. And so I first just want to talk about what is the winter solstice. You know, we are here. Tomorrow is actually the official winter solstice, December 21st. This year, it moves around. But it's really this point where every single day for the last 3 months, every day has been getting shorter. Every day's been getting darker. It's starting to get colder. We're moving through fall and all of winter. Winter is approaching us, and everything is starting to sort of go within and become quiet. And then there's this thing that happens where a shift of one day takes place, and suddenly where it looked like it was getting darker and darker every day, suddenly it starts to get brighter and brighter every day. Each day starts to get longer and longer. The sun comes out a little bit more, and the cycle continues. Well, if we think back to our experience as humans on this planet, and let's go back a couple hundred years or a couple thousand years before we had electricity, before we had all of the modern comforts and conveniences that we have now, and think about what a significant time of the year the winter solstice really represents, that this is actually a time where we need to come together to huddle to survive, to stay warm, that the nights are longer and the sort of danger of what's out in the darkness is prevailing around us more and more and more. And so we had to gather together, we had to stay warm, we had to come together to sort of be with each other for protection, for safety from the darkness and from the cold and from the weather, especially in the northern hemisphere where things get very cold and snowy and dark in certain places around the wintertime. And that in a sense, the winter solstice is this time of coming together to survive the dark night. And that out of that need to come together, we began to celebrate what happened the next day. Is that suddenly, after we had to go through this darkest time and lean into each other and help each other stay warm and begin to have celebrations where we share gifts and we begin to tell stories about how the light's going to come back. About no matter how dark and cold it might be tonight, the light is going to return tomorrow, and it's going to become brighter, and there's a new world in front of us where things are going to grow, and the new seasons are going to start to come, and all the animals are going to come back, and life is going to begin to flourish again. And that story becomes incredibly important to us as humans. That metaphor becomes incredibly important to us all over the world. That the birth of a new light into the world, the birth of a new possibility, is something we need to look forward to. And so, of course, the story of Jesus, the one who is to be called the Savior or the light of the world, the birth celebration of this story gets placed right at the same time as the turning of the winter solstice. That on a few days after we recognize that the turning of the seasons has happened and that the light is returning, we celebrate the birth of the light into the world. And that almost all of the holidays that show up in many different cultures and times around this time of year are all about celebrating the light. We have Hanukkah. Kwanzaa is about coming together with the light of the family. Hanukkah is about celebrating the miraculousness of the light and warmth that was necessary through an incredibly dark time. It's all about recognizing that the light can be available to us when we need it the most. And that whenever it seems to be getting darkest and coldest, it's the turning point right before it all starts to change. And that story can be incredibly relevant to us, not only year after year when it starts to get dark and cold, and we need to remember that spring is going to come around again, but it can also be a story for us to remember throughout our lives when things start to seem dark and cold metaphorically. When society or the world around us seems to be going through this sort of dying time or changing time or time of darkness or time of struggle or time of difficulty, that we can turn to nature, we can turn to these deep stories that remind us that the light is available. And I think back to many of the stories of ancient traditions of shamans across the planet on the winter solstice, seeing the sun getting weaker and weaker and weaker every day, and possibly thinking, my goodness, it needs my support. It needs our help in order for the sun to be strong enough to get through this cold night so that tomorrow it can be stronger again. And so we would begin to light great bonfires and have big dances and parties and festivals and celebrations to keep the light going, to ignite our lights, to ignite our fires so that we could support the source of light itself getting through the darkest time. And in a sense, if we all did a good enough job and burned our fires bright enough and celebrated and prayed hard enough, that the light would have then returned the next year and we'd see every day start to get brighter. And there's incredible power, like I said, in looking in these metaphors and these stories and these cycles and these seasons. But then to look at these as within cycles within cycles and patterns within patterns, right? That we have this reminder every year that it gets darker and lighter, that the return of the light happens every year, that we can focus on it. We do it through our holidays and celebrations. But then we take that out into this sort of time in history. And that in a sense, I've heard a lot of people say, this has been a really dark year. This has been a really difficult year. This has been a very lonely year. And that in a lot of ways, over the course of the shelter in place and the times through COVID, we've all sort of had to go into a hibernation phase that's not just been a winter time, but it's been a whole year. We've all sort of been in a year of winter, if you will. Well, we've all had to go within. We've all had to sort of move through the difficulty and the darkness. And we have, again, winter solstice coming around to remind us that the light can return. And yet, there's something sort of magical and auspicious about this winter solstice. Because not only are we approaching the darkest night in maybe one of the darkest years, metaphorically, that many of us have experienced, but also on winter solstice this year, there's a beautiful cosmic alignment happening. And that's that right before the sunset, or right after sunset, tomorrow night on the winter solstice, that Jupiter and Saturn are going to be coming together in a way that hasn't been seen in over 800 years. And the fact that it's happening on the winter solstice, that these two powerful bright lights in the sky are coming together to be basically unified as one light on the darkest night, in one of the darkest years, in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of all the upheaval. We come around to winter solstice this year, and then there's this extra sign or symbol that's being thrown on top of it, that there's another sort of cosmic season that's taking place. There's another greater story that's wrapping itself around all of this. And in my little researching this year, or this month, or last week, of what do Saturn and Jupiter represent astrologically or metaphorically or metaphysically, and that that these two planetary bodies and the gods that they are associated with, in a sense, represents fate and governance. That this is about destiny and order. That this is about a change, and that these lights are coming together, that destiny and order are coming together, that the ways of governing and the ways of keeping our story going are aligning right in front of us, and then they're going to drop out of sight right as it begins to get dark. And then we move into the darkest night. And if we just want to begin to just even think for a moment that if the universe is a mirror reflecting itself back to us, and we can look at these big cosmic alignments and these solar holidays and the shift of the seasons and see that there's a great sense of order trying to show itself to us right now. That it's almost miraculous that these cycles come together on their own. The earth is spinning and it has its own process of a year, and then all of these other planets are spinning in their own order and orbits, and that it just so happens that on the winter solstice, right after sunset, in the midst of 2020 and all the shift and transition, then there's this other beautiful thing that's going to pop up in the sky as just a reminder to say, think about this. Look at this. What could this mean? And to me, it's a symbol that we really are in a time of great transition. There's a whole bunch of YouTube videos of was this the Star of Bethlehem? Could this be our own Christmas star this year, shining the light and saying, look this way? That this powerful alignment is taking place, and that the symbols and the signs of the seasons are surrounding us to give us the inspiration that we need to remind each one of us that the light is ours to carry. And that if we look back to our ancient ancestors, looking at the sun dying and saying, it needs my input, it needs my participation, it needs me to light a fire and dance and sing and drum and pray all night long to support the return of the light. If in any way we look out into the world in front of us right now and feel like what we see is the dying of the light, or the dimming of the light, or the growing of the darkness and the chaos and the confusion and the sort of nighttime of consciousness, if that's what we see, then let each one of us take it upon ourselves to realize that it's our job to support the light through the darkest night. That it's our job to light up the scene. It's our job to be the light in the midst of the darkness, so that we can support it in each other, so that we can share it in each other, so that we can bring light to the darkest places, so that we can illuminate the confusion. And that if on any level we see out in the world that things are breaking down and falling apart, and that we feel like there's a winter time in consciousness that's taking place, then let us be the ones who feel so moved that it is our responsibility to hold the light up, that it is our responsibility to be it. Because if we are willing to support the light by letting it grow within ourselves, then we can be the ones who help bring the light back into the world. And that if we know that the nature of the universe is to always move in cycles and to give us the signs of what we need to be paying attention to, then we should look to this time as, in a sense, a most auspicious reflection that is saying to us, pay attention. Pay attention to what is yours to do. Pay attention to what part of this is yours to take on. I've been saying over the course of much of this year throughout 2020 that I really believe that this year has been a year of beautiful disruption, that this chaos has been powerful, and that for each one of us, something has been disturbed, something has been moved. And whether you've been brought to anger, whether you've been brought to passion, whether you've been brought to inspiration or confusion, whether you found something in yourself that really needs attention and dissection, or whether you found something in the world that really needs attention and creative possibility, whatever it is that that has been brought to the forefront of your mind and your awareness and your heart and your questioning this year, that is the thing for you to begin to look to. How can I illuminate this? How can I shed light on this one thing. This is the light that I'm going to carry into 2021. And that as we've all wandered through the chaos of the last year, I really believe that each one of us has been given a place to look. And that what we need to do now is, as we go into the next year, let our practice be about illuminating that thing that we've been called to look at. Many of us have begun to do the work of exploring systemic racism and oppression as it exists within ourselves through conversations and book groups like me and white supremacy. Many of us have gone to march on the streets or begin to thinking about different ways of structuring the world around us, or how we need to address the new issues or problems, or what it is that we need to change in order to participate in a new way. Whatever it is that's been brought up for us, I want to say that each one of us choose, acknowledge, find one thing that we're willing to commit to say, I am going to bring light unto this as I walk through the next year. That each one of us has been given a gift by what has been present for us in the last number of months. And the question is, what are we going to do with it? And we can each see the problems in the world, or the problems we find in ourselves, or whatever it is that needs to be addressed, and we can let those problems grow and take over our minds. Or we can choose to begin to ask deep questions into these things and into ourselves and into our own reflection, and begin to look for, how is it that I can be a place where light shines into this? How can I shine light into this situation, into myself, into the world? How can I be a place of illumination, of possibility? Because we are continuously moving through very interesting times. And I think things are only going to keep getting more interesting. And as we find these interesting things, let us become involved. Let us become a place of questioning, a place of possibility, a place of deep searching, looking for meaning. Because if everything and everyone around us is the universe reflecting us back to us individually and collectively, then the messages are there screaming to us on every level. And in the beginning of the year, we talked about the metaphors of COVID-19's effects on the body and humanity's effects on the planet, and how these things are mirrors of each other. And now we're looking to the metaphor of the turning of the dark night into the return of the light, and seeing that that is also the story that's taking place in our society. And seeing this great astrological alignment and this beautiful phenomenon we all get to witness in the sky, should we be willing to look and recognize that it's just one more acknowledgement that times are changing. And by the way, I didn't mention this before, but these two planets coming together on winter solstice in the night sky are happening to do so in the constellation of Aquarius. Yeah. Which I believe has something metaphorically to do with this story of the dawning of the age of Aquarius, or the turning of the tides, or the changing of the times, or the second coming, or the great awakening, or whatever you want to call it. But what if that's the story that we start to tell? Is that in this moment where the world is changing and single thing, structurally, philosophically, societally, everything is changing. What if the story that we say is that all of this breakdown is for newness? That all of this seeming chaos and separation is so that we can come together in a new way, so that we can change the order of things and bring forth a new order of being. And so this winter solstice, let us begin to contemplate that on this darkest night, in this very interesting year of chaos, that there is a new light forming, that there is a new day arriving, that there is a new possibility seeking to be expressed through us, and that it's ours to say yes to step into, to participate in, to be part of. And I've been saying, let us think of this last year as the year of transition. And if 2020 was indeed not 2020, but year zero, that the old story is over and the new story has begun. That means that next year is year 1. So what are you going to do in the first year of the new paradigm? What are you going to do with the first year of the new story? What light are you going to carry into the world? What thing are you going to choose to illuminate and participate in a new way? Because what if we all just began to collectively share in a new idea that we are now walking in a new age, that we have all stepped together through the great portal of 2020, through the great year of change, and that now together we are walking into a new world and that we are building it starting now. That everything that we needed to see that we weren't willing to look at before has been brought up to our attention. Let's look at it, let's use it, let's dissect it, let's rearrange it, and let's rebuild something new. And so let us begin to tell a whole new story. That this winter solstice is not just about the return of the light this year, but it's the return of a whole new story. It's the return of a whole new light into the world, and not just for us, but for all people, for all of consciousness, for all of evolution, for all of life. Let us know that this shake-up is what we all needed to wake up, and that this year is the year of great change, and that we choose to participate in this change consciously, on purpose, with intention and attention. And that conscious participation, intention, and attention, that is the light that we have to bring. What is it that we're going to consciously look at, participate in, be the change that we want to see? And so let us begin to contemplate, as we come together tonight in our solstice candlelighting service, what is the light that each one of us wants to ignite and claim that we're going to bring into the next world? What are the things that we want to claim need our illumination, our awareness, our intention, our participation? And also begin to contemplate, as we move into wrapping up 2020, what is it that we are ready to let go of? What is it that no longer serves? What are the things that we're leaving in the old paradigm that we are not taking with us into the new one? And let's start to name these things. What is it that we must illuminate and give ourselves wholly and fully to if we truly want to live into a world that works for everyone, a world of possibility, a world that is harmonious and filled with love and light everywhere we look? And so let us together use this dark night and this moment when we get to see that the light returns and there's another light in the sky signaling a great change. Let us step forward into a whole new world tomorrow, knowing that every day after this is going to get brighter. And so if you will, take a deep breath in. And let go. Take another deep breath in. And let go. And so, my friends, let us just breathe into the awareness that each one of us is indeed breathed by something greater than ourselves. And that something is living and breathing throughout the entirety of the universe, unfolding as everyone, as everything, as every life, every when, and everywhere. And that this one unfolds through cycles and through seasons and through possibility and through change, through creation, through evolution, through the movements of consciousness. God is rising always to new layers and levels of its own complexity, of recognizing itself, of finding itself. And so let us be in the awareness this day that each one of us is a place where the Spirit of the living God is constantly revealing itself and being made manifest into human form, into creative possibility here on this earth plane of existence. And let us stand together today as a place where the light shines bright, even through the darkest night. Whether that dark night is in winter, whether that dark night is a time in history, whether that dark night is a moment in our lives. Let us always remember that the cycles and the seasons and the signs of the universe and nature and life all around us always are here to remind us that no matter how dark and cold we may be, light is always, always available. That the light will always return. And so let us be in a place where we recognize, claim, know, and declare for ourselves and for all of life around us that we are together engaging in a new story. And that this year is so much more than just a changing of the seasons. That this year is about the turning of the tide. That it is about the turning of the story. And so let us together in gratitude and joy and in celebration and expectancy of all that is possible continuously walk forward into the unseen with a sense of absolute faith, trust, and knowing that there is indeed a power for good in this universe that is greater than we are, that lives and breathes and moves all things, and that it is in that we can surrender, that we can allow, that we can open our hearts and minds to be led into what is next, into what is ours to do, and to where it is that our light is to be shined, to be shared. Let each one of us remember that indeed we are the light bringers, that we are the light, and so it is.